The soft blue glow of the holographic interface illuminated the cavernous space of the Grand Library of the Galactic Confederation. Suspended in the air, a perfect replica of Earth's final sunrise before transit shimmered with hyper-realistic detail, the golden rays breaking through wisps of clouds over an ocean that no longer existed. The colors were too vibrant, the light too pure compared to the polluted skies humans had grown accustomed to in their final decades on their home planet. "Archive activation complete," announced the library's artificial intelligence in a melodious tone that echoed through the domed ceiling. Historical sequence, humanity, years 0 through 200 post-integration. Archivist Selene Torve stood motionless as the hologram expanded around her, immersing her in the scenes of humanity's journey. Her dark eyes reflected the dancing lights, and her hand, adorned with the silver markings of her office, brushed against the neural interface at her temple, a permanent reminder of the technology that had changed her species forever. "Begin narration," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to present. The hologram shifted, and her own voice filled the chamber. "Pre-recorded for this official historical account. What does it mean?" The narration began. "To carry the weight of your origin when you orbit among the stars. 2 centuries ago, humanity emerged from its cradle, a species untested by interstellar standards, barbaric by some measures, innovative by others, to join the ancient alliance of civilizations known as the Galactic Confederation. This is our story, primitive in our beginnings, problematic in our integration, persistent in our determination to belong among the celestial community. The images changed rapidly. Earth's depleted continents, the first contact ships descending through cloud cover, the signing of the Confederation Charter with human hands trembling beside the appendages of beings beyond their wildest imaginations. "I have compiled this archive," Selene's recorded voice continued, "not to glorify nor condemn, but to understand. For in understanding our past 200 years among the stars, we might chart a wiser course for our next 2 centuries. The holographic display pulsed once, signaling the formal beginning of the archive presentation. Selene took a deep breath. There would be representatives from all the 12 houses of the Confederation in attendance tomorrow. The accuracy of this record would determine not just her career, but potentially humanity's standing in the cosmos. The Galactic Confederation existed long before humans gazed upward and wondered if they were alone. 12 ruling houses, each representing evolutionary branches so diverse that some communicated through color shifts in their exoskeletons, while others transmitted thoughts via controlled electromagnetic pulses. Hundreds of member species occupied thousands of worlds across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their alliance maintained through a delicate balance of trade, cultural exchange, and mutual defense. At the center of this vast political entity sat the Council of Elders, beings chosen not for their age, though many had lived for centuries, but for their wisdom and perspective. They deliberated in chambers that rotated through 12 orbital platforms, one for each ruling house, ensuring no single influence dominated the decision-making process. The Confederation's founding principle, encoded in every official communication, was harmony through diversity. Yet, like all political structures built by sentient beings, it contained its contradictions, entrenched hierarchies, unacknowledged prejudices, and the inevitable factions that formed around competing interests. Humanity's invitation to join this cosmic community came as a surprise to both parties. Earth's deteriorating environment and social upheaval had pushed humans to the brink of extinction when the Confederation's survey vessels detected their unusual blend of technological achievement and self-destructive tendencies. What caught the Confederation's attention, however, was neither humanity's failures nor its modest successes, but rather its unique combination of aggressive expansion and creative adaptation. "They evolve culturally faster than any species we've encountered," noted the initial assessment, preserved now in Selene's archive. Their capacity for both creation and destruction in such rapid cycles presents both opportunity and risk. The opportunity proved too tempting to ignore. The Galactic Confederation had reached a period of stagnation. 10,000 years of peace had brought prosperity, but also complacency. Some among the Council of Elders argued that humanity's volatile nature might serve as a catalyst for renewed innovation. And so, humanity received its conditional membership and a new home, Nova Terra, a planet in the habitable zone of a stable yellow star. Similar enough to Earth to support human life, but wild enough to test their adaptability. Unlike the carefully managed environments of established Confederation worlds, Nova Terra was left deliberately unregulated, a place where humans could prove themselves without immediately disrupting the delicate balance of older civilizations. The planet became a living laboratory, terraformed with Earth's flora and fauna, but containing its own native elements. Here, humans would demonstrate whether their species could transcend its violent origins or would simply transport their destructive tendencies to new shores. The technology exchange that followed first contact transformed both humanity and their new alien associates. Humans adapted quickly to biointerface implants that allowed neural connectivity to Confederation networks. Though many refused complete integration, insisting on maintaining their natural state. This reluctance puzzled the Confederation species, many of whom had evolved beyond biological limitations eons ago. For their part, Confederation specialists struggled to comprehend human improvisational tactics, the tendency to discard established protocols in favor of intuitive solutions that often succeeded despite violating fundamental principles their own civilizations held sacred. "They don't follow their own rules," complained one Aurelian trainer after observing humans modify standardized terraforming equipment. "They achieve results, yes, but through methods that cannot be systematically reproduced or taught." This cultural friction gave birth to one of the most distinctive features of human integration, the Panopticon festivals. Initially conceived as formal evaluation periods where Confederation observers could assess human progress. These events evolved into sprawling exhibitions where species exchanged not just technologies, but art forms, weapon prototypes, culinary innovations, and survival techniques. At these festivals, humans demonstrated their adaptability in dramatic fashion. They incorporated Nokorian crystalline architecture into their designs while teaching aliens Earth dance forms. They learned alien mathematical systems and applied them to create new musical instruments that produced sounds no human ear had evolved to appreciate, but which moved non-human audiences to emotional states their own art rarely achieved. Nova Terra itself became a symbol of this cultural fusion. Its forests glowed bioluminescent at night, partly from Earth transplants genetically modified to survive the longer days, partly from native flora that humans had carefully preserved. Cities rose on magnetic platforms floating above molten lakes that provided geothermal energy, while underground networks of tunnels, a distinctly human addition, connected communities that preferred the safety of solid ground beneath their feet. It was into this complex social and physical landscape that the key figures of humanity's second century among the stars emerged. Individuals whose actions would determine whether humanity's experiment would continue or end in failure. Archivist Celine Torve had never known Earth except through historical recordings. Born on Nova Terra to parents who worked as environmental engineers, she grew up with the weight of humanity's ecological failures as bedtime stories, cautionary tales about the world they had lost through carelessness and greed. "We must never forget," her mother would say, showing her ancient photographs of vanished rainforests and dried seabeds. "But we must never be paralyzed by remembering." This philosophy shaped Celine into a meticulous recorder of human achievements and failures. Her appointment as senior archivist came after she uncovered a series of corrupted records that had hidden the full extent of a failed terraforming project on Nova Terra's southern continent, a project that both human and Confederation authorities had attempted to erase from public memory. Her insistence on complete transparency, even when it reflected poorly on human adaptation efforts, earned her respect among the Confederation's scholarly communities. Yet it also made her a target for those who believed humanity's standing required careful image management rather than brutal honesty. At 42, Celine carried herself with the straight-backed poise of someone accustomed to defending uncomfortable truths. Her dark hair was cut in the simple, practical style favored by those who spent more time in archives than in social gatherings, and the neural interface at her temple, more visible than most, signaled her embrace of Confederation technology without attempting to disguise its alien origins. The truth, she often told her apprentices, needs no cosmetic enhancements. Councillor Varex presented a stark contrast to Celine's measured approach. The Aurelian delegate stood over 8 feet tall, his scaled body rippling with iridescent colors that shifted with his moods, currently displaying the deep purples and blues that indicated skepticism. As a member of a species that evolved from apex predators on a world with crushing gravity, Varex moved with a fluid grace that belied his massive size. 20 years earlier, Varex had led protests against human expansion, famously riding his ceremonial mount, a genetically enhanced creature resembling an Earth rhinoceros but with 6 legs and armored plating, through the streets of the Confederation capital, calling for humanity's probationary status to be made permanent. They bring chaos wherever they settle, he had declared to a crowd of thousands. Their creativity is matched only by their capacity for destruction. Time had tempered his views somewhat, particularly after a human medical team saved his clutch of offspring from a virus that had baffled Aurelian physicians. Still, he remained the most prominent voice of caution regarding humanity's role in the Confederation, advocating for stricter oversight and slower integration. In private council sessions, Varex acknowledged humanity's contributions while maintaining his public stance of skepticism, a political necessity given his constituency's lingering fears about the unpredictable primates, as humans were sometimes derogatorily called in Aurelian circles. Where Varex represented established power, Engineer Nalku embodied the new generation born after human integration. A Nokorian, a species of crystalline-based life forms that communicated primarily through light patterns and consumed energy rather than organic matter. Nalku had been recognized as a prodigy from their earliest development stage. Their first invention, created when they were equivalent to a human 10-year-old, was a miniature terraforming drone that could adjust soil composition to support both Nokorian crystal gardens and Earth vegetation simultaneously. This cross-species adaptation earned them a place in the prestigious Confederation engineering corps, where they quickly rose to lead research teams exploring the integration of human intuitive design with Nokorian precision manufacturing. Unlike many of their elders, Nalku found humans fascinating rather than threatening. They secretly collected human imperfections, items manufactured with deliberate flaws or asymmetries that Nokorians would consider defective, but which humans prized for their uniqueness. Their laboratory contained shelves of hand-thrown pottery, imperfectly bound books, and clothing with intentional distressing, all examples of what Nalku called the beauty of warts. This appreciation for human aesthetic values made Nalku an important bridge between species, though they carefully maintained a professional demeanor in official settings, where such enthusiasm might be seen as undignified. Perhaps the most controversial figure in humanity's Confederation story was envoy Mira Patia, whose journey from soldier to diplomat embodied the transformation many hoped to see in humanity as a whole. Born in the last days of Earth, Mira had fought in the resource wars that hastened the planet's decline. The neural scarring visible at the base of her skull, a reminder of combat implants removed during Confederation integration, testified to her violent past. Yet Mira possessed a charisma that transcended species barriers. Her direct approach to negotiation, what she called honest diplomacy, cut through the layers of protocol that often stifled Confederation discourse. When addressing the Council, she spoke without the formal preambles and ritualized acknowledgments that could stretch introductions to hours, earning both offense and grudging appreciation. "We don't have 10,000 years to get this right," she famously declared during a crisis negotiation. Some problems need solutions now, not perfect solutions next century. Mira believed passionately in humanity's transformational potential, not just adaptation to Confederation norms, but active contribution to a new synthesis of values. Her vision of humans as cosmic citizens rather than transplanted Earthlings gained followers among younger generations who had never known Earth and saw Nova Terra as merely their first home among many possible worlds. These four individuals, Selene with her commitment to truth, Virex with his cautious skepticism, Nalku with their bridge-building innovations, and Mira with her visionary pragmatism, would play crucial roles as humanity's primitive roots surfaced in ways both troubling and promising. The holographic archive flickered, transitioning to the recorded memories of first contact, not the official version broadcast throughout the Confederation, but the raw footage captured by both human and alien observers, preserved in Selene's meticulous collection. The human envoy ship, a patchwork vessel cobbled together from the remains of Earth's space program, drifted into the docking bay of the Confederation capital station. Its hull bore the scars of hasty repairs and the improvised insignia of a unified Earth government that had existed for barely 6 months before this momentous meeting. Inside the station, representatives from 24 species lined the arrival chamber, their diverse biologies requiring different atmospheric conditions maintained by invisible force fields. Some floated in nutrient baths, others perched on anti-gravity platforms. A few wore mechanical exoskeletons to support bodies evolved for different gravitational conditions. The human delegation emerged slowly, their expressions cycling through awe, fear, and determination. The lead ambassador, a woman whose name was recorded as Admiral Helena Chen, stepped forward with rehearsed dignity, only to freeze as the full impact of the alien gathering registered in her consciousness. What happened next became legendary in Confederation anthropological studies. Instead of delivering the carefully crafted speech prepared by Earth's remaining diplomatic corps, Chen turned to a delegation and nodded. From behind them, crew members brought forward instruments, drums of various sizes, fashioned from materials salvaged from Earth's depleted resources. Without explanation, the humans began to play. A rhythmic pattern that started simply but quickly evolved into complex polyrhythms that filled the chamber with sound. Some aliens retreated, their sensitive auditory organs overwhelmed. Others moved closer, fascinated by this unexpected form of communication. The drumming continued for exactly 7 minutes and 12 seconds before stopping abruptly. In the silence that followed, Admiral Chen spoke a single sentence. This is the heartbeat of humanity, irregular, persistent, alive. The Confederation linguists, prepared to translate formal diplomatic language, struggled to contextualize this performance. Was it a threat display, a religious ritual, a demonstration of technological capabilities through acoustic manipulation? Only later would they understand it as something uniquely human, an improvisational response to being overwhelmed. A retreat to cultural expression when words seemed inadequate, and a demonstration of humanity's fundamental belief that communication transcended language. This pattern of disruption through unexpected approaches would characterize humanity's early integration into Confederation society. On Nova Terra, human communities struggled with the anti-gravity housing units provided by Confederation engineers. The structures, elegant and efficient by alien standards, disoriented humans whose evolutionary balance mechanisms required constant contact with a gravitational surface, rather than adapting as expected. Many human settlements simply abandoned the floating platforms and began excavating dwellings into hillsides and cliff faces, reverting to cave dwelling but with modern amenities installed inside these primitive shells. Confederation observers watched with alarm as humans rejected advanced technology in favor of solutions their ancestors might have employed millennia earlier. "They're regressing," noted one Nokorian report. "The stress of integration appears to be triggering atavistic behaviors." What the observers failed to recognize was not regression but pragmatic adaptation. The caves maintained constant temperatures without energy expenditure. provided natural protection from Nova Terra's occasional radiation storms, and satisfied a deep psychological need for shelter that felt secure by human instinctive standards. This practical approach extended to other areas of settlement development, sometimes with more problematic results. When a human community needed additional space for a medical facility, they simply dismantled a section of decorative wall in an adjacent alien archive building, a structure the Confederation had preserved for its historical significance. "It's just stones," the human construction leader argued when confronted by horrified Confederation officials. "The patients need the space now, and we can rebuild your wall later." This utilitarian dismissal of cultural preservation shocked societies that measured their histories in millennia rather than centuries. The incident required diplomatic intervention at the highest levels, with Mira Bhatia negotiating a compromise that included human reconstruction of the wall using traditional methods and a formal apology ceremony that lasted 3 days. Yet alongside these cultural frictions, humanity demonstrated remarkable persistence in crisis situations that earned grudging respect even from skeptics like Virex. When an Aurelian research station in Nova Terra's northern hemisphere was captured by a splinter group of extremists, a mixed faction of various species opposed to Confederation expansion, the official response teams calculated a standard negotiation period of several weeks before intervention would be authorized. Mira Bhatia, then serving as regional security coordinator, rejected this timeline. "There are researchers in there who will die waiting for your protocols to run their course," she told the Confederation Security Council. When her request for immediate action was denied, she took matters into her own hands, assembling a team of former Earth military personnel who had retained their combat training. Mira led an unauthorized rescue operation using salvaged equipment and jury-rigged Confederation technology. The human team infiltrated the station through waste disposal channels too narrow for larger Aurelian security forces, neutralized the extremists using stun weapons modified to work across different physiologies, and evacuated all hostages before the official negotiation team had even finalized their approach strategy. The operation succeeded with minimal casualties, but the political fallout was immediate. The Council of Elders convened an emergency session to address what many members viewed as a dangerous precedent: humans ignoring established procedures and taking independent military action on Confederation territory. "If they cannot abide by our collective decision-making processes," argued Councillor Thrall of the 7th House, "then perhaps they are too volatile for full membership." Virex, despite his public skepticism about human integration, offered an unexpected perspective. Their methods were unorthodox, yes, but they acted to protect Confederation citizens when our own procedures would have resulted in preventable deaths. Perhaps it is our protocols, not their responses, that require reconsideration. This qualified defense from a known critic shifted the debate. Rather than sanctions against humanity, the Council established a new category of emergency response protocols that formalized faster intervention timelines while maintaining Confederation oversight, a compromise that acknowledged both the value of human decisiveness and the importance of collective governance. These early conflicts and adaptations set the stage for deeper cultural collisions as humanity's presence in the Confederation expanded beyond Nova Terra to trade missions, scientific expeditions, and cultural exchanges throughout Confederation space. The centenary of humanity's admission to the Galactic Confederation should have been a celebration of progress. Instead, it became a flashpoint for xenophobic backlash that threatened to unravel 100 years of integration efforts. The catalyst was the destruction of the Monument of Harmonic Convergence on Nova Terra's equatorial plateau, a delicate crystalline structure created by Nokorian architects to commemorate the first successful cross-species art form developed jointly by humans and non-humans. The monument, which converted solar energy into complex light and sound patterns, had stood as a symbol of cultural synthesis for over 50 years. Its collapse during what was officially described as a structural failure during atmospheric disturbance sent shockwaves through Confederation diplomatic circles. Virex, whose political position had hardened again after a contested re-election campaign, immediately called for an investigation, publicly suggesting that human negligence or even deliberate sabotage might be responsible. "We have accommodated human unpredictability for a century," he declared to the council, his scales flashing the crimson and gold colors of formal accusation. Yet they continue to demonstrate fundamental incompatibility with Confederation values of preservation and respect. The motion he introduced, supported by representatives from 4 of the 12 ruling houses, called for a reassessment of humanity's status, with options ranging from increased oversight to potential subjugation as a protectorate species rather than full members. The diplomatic language barely disguised the threat: conform or be controlled. While the political crisis unfolded in the Confederation capital, engineer Nal Ku conducted their own investigation of the monument's remains. As one of the few Nokorians who regularly collaborated with human engineers, they had access to both Confederation forensic technology and human analytical approaches. What they discovered contradicted the official narrative in unexpected ways. The monument's destruction had not been accidental, but neither had it been the result of human carelessness. Microscopic analysis of the fracture patterns revealed deliberate destabilization of key structural nodes, precision work that required intimate knowledge of Nokorian crystalline architecture. More disturbing was the evidence Nalku uncovered in the surrounding soil: trace elements from explosives manufactured on an Aurelian colony world, combined with degraded biological markers matching those of a human supremacist group known as Terra Ascendant. The implications were clear and troubling. The monument had been destroyed in a collaboration between extremists from multiple species, including humans, designed to inflame tensions and force a confrontation that would drive humanity and the Confederation apart. Nalku brought this evidence directly to archivist Celine Torve, bypassing official channels they suspected might be compromised. This wasn't an accident or simple vandalism, they explained, their crystalline form pulsing with the turquoise hues of urgent communication. This was engineered conflict. Together, they faced a dangerous question: who would benefit from forcing humanity back into isolation? The answer pointed toward factions that had opposed integration from the beginning: conservatives in the Confederation who feared human unpredictability and human militants who rejected alien influence on their development. What Nalku hadn't shared immediately was the most disturbing discovery: communications records indicating that the human participants in the sabotage believed they were acting in humanity's best interests. The Terra Ascendant Manifesto, recovered from a hidden server node, revealed a twisted logic. Only through crisis will humanity unite. Only through threat will we overcome our divisions. The Confederation has made us complacent, dependent. Let them turn against us, and watch how quickly we remember our strength. This revelation placed Celine in an impossible position. Revealing the human involvement would confirm Virex's accusations and potentially trigger the very restrictions the extremists sought to provoke. Hiding it would violate her commitment to historical truth and risk later discovery that would permanently damage humanity's credibility. The crisis came to a head as the Council prepared to vote on Virex's motion for human oversight. Human representatives from Nova Terra and the handful of other settlements established throughout Confederation territory gathered in an emergency summit, divided between those who advocated appeasement and those who proposed defiance. It was in this atmosphere of suspicion and fracturing alliances that humanity unveiled what would later be recognized as one of their most significant contributions to Confederation culture: the Symphony Engine. Developed in secret by a consortium of human artists and engineers led by envoy Mira Bhatia. The Symphony Engine represented a technological approach no Confederation species had previously explored, a machine that converted ambient sound, particularly music, into clean energy through quantum harmonic resonance. The public demonstration was staged deliberately at the site of the destroyed monument, where the crystalline structure had once stood. Human technicians installed a device that resembled both a musical instrument and a power generator. As a mixed choir of human and alien voices began to sing, each species contributing sounds from their own musical traditions, the engine hummed to life. projecting a holographic light display that recreated the fallen monument while simultaneously powering the environmental systems of the surrounding area. "We offer this not as a replacement for what was lost," Mira announced to the assembled dignitaries and the billions watching through Confederation networks, "but as a demonstration of what humanity brings to our shared future. We transform discord into harmony, conflict into creation." The scientific and cultural impact was immediate and divisive. Confederation analysis teams scrambled to understand the principles behind the Symphony engine, which violated several established laws of energy transfer according to conventional Confederation physics. Some denounced it as a trick or illusion. Others recognized it as a genuine breakthrough that merged artistic expression with practical technology in a way characteristic of human innovation. Virex, watching the demonstration from the council chambers, found his position suddenly undermined. How could he argue for restrictions on a species that had just offered a potentially revolutionary energy source freely to the Confederation? The political calculus shifted beneath him as representatives from houses that had supported his motion now hesitated, sensing an opportunity in human innovation that might benefit their own interests. The Confederation Scientific Corps fractured along ideological lines. Traditional theorists dismissed the Symphony engine as a novelty that couldn't be scaled or standardized. Progressive researchers, many from younger generations more accustomed to human presence, embraced the cross-disciplinary approach it represented. "Is it genius or barbarism?" asked one Aurelian physicist in a widely shared analysis. "When a species ignores established boundaries between disciplines and creates something that shouldn't work according to our understanding, yet demonstrably does." While public attention focused on this technological and cultural debate, Céline Torve made a discovery that shook her professional foundations. Reviewing historical archives for context on previous human Confederation conflicts, she found discrepancies in record sequences, subtle alterations that had been hidden through sophisticated data manipulation. Further investigation revealed that her mentor, the previous senior archivist, had systematically modified entries related to human history within the Confederation. The changes downplayed human atrocities while emphasizing incidents where Confederation species had mistreated humans. The narrative had been carefully shaped to present humanity as more victim than aggressor, more asset than liability. This discovery forced Céline to confront a painful truth. The historical record she had dedicated her life to preserving had been compromised from within by one of her own species, presumably to protect humanity's standing. The implications extended beyond professional ethics to the core of her identity. If humans had manipulated their own history, what else might they have fabricated in their quest for acceptance? As Céline struggled with this revelation, Envoy Mira Bhatia faced a reckoning of her own. The success of the Symphony engine demonstration had elevated her political position, making her the de facto leader of humanity's diplomatic cause. Yet this visibility also exposed her to renewed scrutiny about her past, specifically her leadership of a guerrilla resistance group during Earth's final years. Evidence emerged linking her former organization to attacks on corporate water reserves and automated defense systems. While these actions had been taken in the name of equitable resource distribution during Earth's collapse, they now resurfaced as examples of humanity's tendency toward violent solutions, precisely the narrative Virex and his supporters wished to promote. Mira neither denied nor defended these actions when confronted by Confederation investigators. "We were fighting for survival on a dying world," she stated simply. "I will not apologize for keeping people alive, but neither will I claim that violence is ever the preferred solution. What matters is not what we did when we had no choices, but what we do now that we have them." This nuanced response, neither rejection of responsibility nor justification of extremism, resonated with many Confederation species whose own histories contained periods of conflict and moral compromise. It also established a principle that would become central to humanity's integration: acknowledgement of past failures without being defined or limited by them. The political and personal tensions surrounding humanity's place in the Confederation might have continued their slow burn for decades more. But events took a dramatic turn when Nova Terra itself rebelled against its inhabitants, both human and alien. The first warning signs appeared in the form of increased seismic activity beneath the floating cities. Monitoring systems recorded magma chamber pressure rising to unprecedented levels, threatening to overwhelm the thermal siphons that provided energy to urban centers. Within days, the situation escalated from concerning to catastrophic as sections of the planet's crust began to destabilize. Scientific analysis pointed to a cascading failure in the planet's core regulatory system, a complex network of Confederation technology that had been installed during initial terraforming to maintain geological stability. The system had functioned flawlessly for over a century, so its sudden deterioration suggested either sabotage or a fundamental design flaw that had taken generations to manifest. Evacuation procedures began immediately, with Confederation transport ships prioritizing the most vulnerable populations. But complete evacuation would require months that Nova Terra's geology would not provide. Predictions indicated that critical failure would occur within weeks, potentially causing the planet's crust to melt into the mantle, destroying all surface settlements and killing millions. The Confederation Emergency Response Council, a body that rarely convened except in cases of interstellar disaster, activated its full authority. Their assessment was bleak. Nova Terra could not be saved through conventional means. The best outcome would be a controlled destruction that minimized casualties and prevented a catastrophic explosion that might threaten neighboring systems. It was in this moment of resignation that human engineers proposed what Confederation experts considered impossible: a direct intervention to stabilize the core by manually resetting the regulatory network from within the planet itself. "We can't reach the primary controls remotely," explained the lead human engineer, displaying holographic models of Nova Terra's interior. "The communication relays are degrading too quickly, but a physical team could descend through the Meridian shaft to the secondary control chamber and implement a hard restart of the entire system." The Confederation representatives were incredulous. "The temperatures at that depth would incinerate any biological entity," pointed out the Seventh House's chief scientist. "And the pressure would crush even our most advanced protection suits." "Not if we modify Nokorian crystal phase technology to create a temporal stasis field around the team," countered Engineer Nal Ku, who had joined the human proposal team. "It won't last long, but it could provide enough time to reach the controls and initiate the reset sequence." The debate raged for precious hours as Nova Terra's condition continued to deteriorate. Cities reported magnetic stabilizers failing. Refugees crowded spaceports seeking evacuation that couldn't come quickly enough. Finally, Virex, whose administrative authority included emergency response oversight, made an unprecedented decision. "I authorize the attempt," he declared, overriding objections from his own advisors. "If we evacuate and abandon Nova Terra, we lose not just a planet, but the symbol of our commitment to integration. Some principles are worth the risk." A joint team was hastily assembled, humans with experience in Nova Terra's underground mining operations, Aurelians with resistance to extreme conditions, and Nokorians whose crystalline bodies could interface directly with the core technology. Leading them was Mira Bhatia, whose experience with both crisis management and cross-species coordination made her the logical choice, despite the political complications her prominence created. The descent into Nova Terra's depths began as the planet entered what scientists termed terminal phase instability. The Meridian shaft, a massive borehole originally drilled to install the core regulatory system, provided access to the mantle. But conditions within had deteriorated beyond all safety parameters. Molten rock splashed against containment fields. Toxic gases seeped through microscopic fractures in the shaft walls. The modified stasis field generated by Nal Ku's team created a bubble of survivable conditions around the expedition, but the energy requirements were immense, draining power reserves faster than calculated. The team was forced to move more quickly than planned, navigating through passages partially collapsed by seismic activity. Tensions within the group flared as conditions worsened. The Aurelian specialists, evolved for endurance rather than speed, struggled to maintain pace with the humans. The Nokorians, whose crystalline forms were vulnerable to sudden temperature changes, required constant field adjustments that drained additional power. "We should turn back," argued the Aurelian team leader as they reached a section where magma had breached the shaft walls, creating a lake of fire that blocked their path. "There's no way across without breaking the stasis field." "There's always a way," Mira countered, directing the human engineers to reconfigure their equipment into a makeshift bridge using cooling elements from their survival packs. The solution worked, but at the cost of those survival packs, a sacrifice that would limit their options if they became trapped below. This pattern of human improvisation, effective but often reckless by Confederation standards, continued throughout the descent. Where Confederation protocols would have called for careful testing and multiple redundancies, the humans pushed forward with minimal safety margins, driven by the knowledge that millions of lives depended on their success. "Your species thrives on the edge of disaster," observed Nalku as they watched humans rewire critical systems in minutes rather than the hours Nokorian engineers would require. "It's simultaneously your greatest strength and most concerning weakness." After 12 hours of descent, the team finally reached the secondary control chamber, a vast cavern housing the quantum computers that regulated Nova Terra's geological processes. The technology, a combination of Confederation standard systems and human modifications added over decades, showed clear signs of deliberate tampering. Circuit pathways had been rerouted, fail-safes disabled, and command protocols overwritten. This wasn't an accident or system failure, Nalku confirmed after connecting to the diagnostic interface. Someone wanted this planet to die. Before the team could process this revelation, the chamber's automatic defense systems activated, another sign of sabotage, as these systems should have recognized authorized personnel. Laser grids crisscrossed the space, while robotic sentries emerged from concealed alcoves, weapons trained on the expedition team. "It's a trap," Mira realized aloud. Someone knew we'd attempt a repair rather than abandoning the planet. The attackers revealed themselves moments later, a holographic projection appearing in the center of the chamber showing the face of Councillor Jevnar, a senior representative of the Fifth House and longtime opponent of human integration. "Your primitive species has served its purpose," the Councillor's projection announced. "The destruction of Nova Terra will be attributed to human incompetence, justifying the restrictions we've advocated for decades. The Confederation will return to its proper order, cleansed of disruptive influences." The revelation that a high-ranking Confederation official had engineered a planetary catastrophe merely to discredit humanity stunned even Virex, who was monitoring the mission from orbit. The political implications were enormous, not just for human Confederation relations, but for the entire power structure of the Interstellar Alliance. But these larger concerns meant nothing to the team trapped in the control chamber as defense systems closed in. The stasis field protecting them from the environmental conditions was failing. They had minutes at most before the chamber's heat and pressure would become lethal. Mira assessed their options with the rapid calculation of a veteran strategist. The control systems needed to be reset manually from 3 separate terminals simultaneously, but the defense grid made reaching all 3 impossible without casualties. "I can create a diversion," she told the others, removing her protective gear. "The defense systems are tracking our thermal signatures. If I move toward the main entrance, they'll follow me, giving you access to the terminals." "That's suicide," protested the Aurelian team leader. "No one could survive exposure to these conditions, even briefly." "Probably," Mira agreed with the grim smile that had become her trademark in crisis situations. "But everyone on this planet dies if we do nothing. Better one than millions." Before anyone could stop her, Mira stepped outside the protective field and sprinted toward the chamber entrance. As predicted, the defense systems tracked her movement, laser grids shifting to target her heat signature while robotic sentries converged on her position. The distraction worked. With the defenses focused on Mira, the remaining team members reached the control terminals and began the reset sequence. Nalku's crystalline appendages blurred as they interfaced directly with the Nokorian components of the system, bypassing security protocols and restoring original parameters. Meanwhile, Mira led the defense systems on a desperate chase through the outer corridors, staying just ahead of weapons fire while environmental exposure began to take its toll. Her skin blistered from the heat, her lungs burned with each breath of toxic air. Yet she continued drawing the sentries away from the control chamber, buying precious seconds for the reset operation. Inside the chamber, a new obstacle emerged. The final stage of the reset required a decryption key that had been corrupted in the sabotage. Without it, the system would reject the new parameters and continue its catastrophic destabilization. Celine Torve, monitoring from the surface through a fragile communication link, recognized the encryption pattern from her archival research. It's based on ancient Nokorian mathematical principles. She transmitted to the team. The key should follow the Fibonacci sequence but adapted to base 8 numerology. This insight, combining Celine's historical knowledge with Nalku's understanding of their own species' programming logic, provided the breakthrough needed. Working together, the human technicians and Nokorian engineers reconstructed the key, demonstrating the cross-species synergy that humanity's advocates had always claimed was possible. The moment the reset sequence completed, Nova Terra's geological systems began to stabilize. Magma chambers depressurized through controlled channels, tectonic plates settled back into sustainable configurations. In cities across the planet, the magnetic platforms that had been failing regained power, lifting threatened communities back to safety above the cooling lava fields. But the victory came at a terrible cost. When rescue teams finally reached the control chamber access corridors, they found Mira Bhatia's body where she had fallen, not from environmental exposure as expected, but from wounds sustained while physically destroying the central processing unit of the defense system, preventing it from adapting to the team's countermeasures. Her sacrifice, a human giving her life to save not just her own species, but all inhabitants of Nova Terra, would become the defining image of humanity's 2 centuries in the Confederation, imperfect in method but unquestionable in intent. The aftermath of Nova Terra's near destruction transformed the political landscape of the Galactic Confederation. The emergency council meeting convened to address Councillor Jevnar's treachery evolved into something unprecedented, a celebration of cooperation across species barriers and a recognition that diversity of approach, while often uncomfortable, provided resilience in crisis. Virex, whose political career had been built on skepticism toward human integration, found himself in the uncomfortable position of publicly praising the very qualities he had once condemned. Standing before the assembled representatives of all 12 houses, his scales displaying the rare gold and white pattern of formal gratitude, he addressed the council with what would become historic words. For 2 centuries, I have questioned whether humanity's unpredictable nature posed more risk than reward to our ancient alliance. Today, I acknowledge that my perspective was incomplete. Their persistence in the face of impossible odds, their willingness to sacrifice for principles rather than advantage, and their capacity to inspire cooperation across the boundaries that have long divided our houses. These are not weaknesses to be contained, but strengths to be cultivated. The speech marked not just a personal evolution, but a shift in Confederation governance. New protocols were established that incorporated both the structured decision-making traditions of older member species and the adaptive response mechanisms championed by humans. Crisis teams were reorganized to include representatives from both methodological approaches, acknowledging that neither caution nor boldness alone provided optimal solutions. Engineer Halku, recognized throughout the Confederation for their role in saving Nova Terra, used their elevated status to push for more integrated technological development. The boundary between art and engineering, long maintained as separate disciplines in Confederation science, dissolved as Nalku's team demonstrated the practical applications of human aesthetic principles to complex technical problems. Their most visible creation was the Memorial of Persistence unveiled at the site where Mira Bhatia had lived during her diplomatic service. Unlike traditional Confederation monuments, which typically preserved a single moment in time through unchanging materials, Nalku designed a structure that evolved constantly, a fusion of Nokorian crystalline architecture that captured and refracted light, human musical elements that responded to environmental changes, and Aurelian living components that grew and adapted seasonally. This memorial honors not just one human sacrifice, Nalku explained at the dedication ceremony, their form glowing with the deep blue of solemn commemoration, but the principle of persistence itself, the commitment to continue seeking better solutions even when conventional wisdom suggests acceptance of fate. For archivist Celine Torve, the resolution of Nova Terra's crisis brought professional challenges as well as opportunities. Her discovery of historical manipulation by her predecessor required difficult decisions about how to correct the record without undermining public confidence in the archival system itself. With characteristic directness, she chose full transparency, publishing a comprehensive analysis of the alterations along by the restored original records and inviting scholars from all Confederation species to participate in a review of human historical documentation. "Truth is persistent," she wrote in the introduction to this massive undertaking. "It resurfaces despite our attempts to reshape it to our comfort or advantage. Rather than fearing this quality, we should embrace it as the foundation of genuine understanding between different evolutionary paths." This philosophical approach resonated beyond academic circles, influencing a broader conversation about how the diverse species of the Confederation might move beyond tolerance toward genuine appreciation of their differences. If humans could acknowledge their violent origins without being defined by them, perhaps other species could similarly integrate the less admirable chapters of their histories into a more honest self-conception. A year after the Nova Terra crisis, Selena addressed the first graduating class of a new educational institution, the Integrated Studies Academy, where young beings from across the Confederation pursued cross-disciplinary learning rather than the traditional single-subject approach that had dominated Confederation education for millennia. Looking out at the diverse gathering, crystalline Nokorians seated beside scaled Aurelians, humans alongside species so physically different that their evolutionary paths had diverged billions of years earlier, Celine delivered a message that captured humanity's journey through its first 2 centuries among the stars. "Our flaws made us dangerous," she told them, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her expression. "Our persistence made us indispensable. Every species represented here today brings similar contradictions, qualities that could divide us if we let fear guide our judgments, or unite us if we recognize that diversity of approach creates resilience against challenges we cannot predict." The Confederation existed for 10,000 years before humanity joined its ranks, she continued. It maintained peace and prosperity through careful management of change and vigilant preservation of established systems. We disrupted that stability, not always intentionally or wisely, but in doing so, we revealed both weaknesses and possibilities that might otherwise have remained hidden for millennia more. Primitive in our origins, problematic in our methods, persistent in our determination to belong. This is humanity's legacy after 200 years among the stars. Not perfection, not even excellence by many Confederation standards, but a stubborn refusal to accept limitations as final or failures as defining. As Celine concluded her address, the holographic archives in the Grand Library completed their record of humanity's first 2 centuries in the Galactic Confederation. The final images showed not just the triumphs and crises that had marked this period, but the everyday realities of integration, human children learning alongside alien peers, cross-species research teams developing technologies neither could have created alone. Cultural festivals where traditions thousands of years apart found unexpected harmonies. The closing sequence revealed a new expedition preparing to depart from Nova Terra, the first human-led mission to explore beyond Confederation space. carrying representatives from 7 species unified not by political necessity but by shared curiosity about what lay beyond their known universe. As the library's artificial intelligence system sealed these records for preservation, it added a single query to the archive metadata, a question for future historians who might access these memories centuries hence. The Galactic Confederation's greatest experiment was never technological or political, but spiritual in the broadest sense. Can beings evolved from fundamentally different origins create a shared future that honors all paths while charting new ones? The next 200 years may provide an answer. The holographic display faded, leaving archivist Selena Torve alone in the vast chamber of the Grand Library. Tomorrow, representatives from all 12 houses would review her compilation of humanity's journey thus far. They would question her interpretations, challenge her selections, debate the meaning of events still echoing through Confederation politics. But tonight, in the quiet glow of ancient knowledge and newly recorded experience, she allowed herself a moment of personal reflection, not as an archivist responsible for objective truth, but as a human being contemplating her species' place among the stars. "We never outgrow our beginnings," she whispered to the empty chamber. "We only learn to carry them with greater wisdom." The library lights dimmed in acknowledgement, preserving her words alongside the official history. One human voice among many in the continuing story of an unlikely integration that had transformed both humanity and the civilization that had cautiously welcomed them to a wider universe.